The story begins with a group of explorers traveling in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean. On this ship is a weather officer named David. His job is to observe and record weather conditions. The team is heading toward a remote island located far away in the middle of the sea. The government has sent David there to study the island's changing weather patterns. David is supposed to stay on the island for almost 1 full year. During this time, he must collect weather data throughout all seasons and then return with a complete report. For this mission, David is provided with a full year's supply of food and all the necessary equipment. After many days of traveling, they finally reach the island. Using a small boat, they land on shore. The island feels completely deserted. There is no sign of life, not even a single bird. On the island, there is a lighthouse and a small house. This house is where David is supposed to live. Before him, another weather officer named Robert stayed here. Robert had already completed his 1-year duty of collecting weather data in complete isolation. Now his duty is over and David is here to replace him. Robert is supposed to leave with the ship, while David will stay behind alone for the next year. But when the team enters the house to check it, they are shocked. There is no sign of any human living there. Inside the rooms, Robert's belongings are scattered everywhere, as if he left in a hurry or something went wrong. Seeing this, the captain and David think that maybe someone is inside the lighthouse. Without wasting any time, they walk toward it. When they reach the lighthouse, they witness a very strange sight. The entire lighthouse is surrounded by sharp wooden spikes placed deliberately, as if someone wanted to trap it and stop anyone from getting inside. The captain and David knock on the lighthouse door several times, but there is no response. Finally, they push the door open and step inside. There, they meet a man named Gruner. When they ask him about the previous weather officer, Robert, Gruner calmly says that Robert is dead. He explains that Robert went toward the sea one day and never came back. Hearing this, both David and the captain are stunned. After hearing everything, the captain tells David that if he wants, he can still return with them. But David refuses. He believes that if he manages to provide the government with accurate and valuable weather data from this island, he could earn a large amount of money. Seeing his determination, the captain gives David a gun for self-defense and warns him that this place does not feel safe at all. He tells David to take care of himself. After that, the ship leaves and David is left alone on the island. The team will not return for another year. Once the captain leaves, David starts settling into the house and makes it livable. After night falls, he finds a diary inside a drawer. It belongs to the former weather officer, Robert. The diary contains many notes about the island. Robert has written about a mysterious creature, but the details are unclear and incomplete. Some parts are missing and some sentences feel unfinished. David reads every line carefully. Inside the diary, there are also strange sketches of unknown creatures. David does not understand why Robert drew these pictures. He assumes that maybe Robert was lonely and did it just to pass the time. On one page, David also finds a photograph of Robert's wife. Eventually, David gets tired while reading and slowly falls asleep. The next morning, David begins collecting weather data, but before he approaches the shore, he suddenly stops. Between the rocks, he noticed stones arranged in a strange pattern, with shells placed between them. The design feels unnatural. David assumes that Gruner might have done this and continues with his work. While working, he looks toward the lighthouse using binoculars and sees Gruner standing there with another figure beside him. But in the blink of an eye, that second figure disappears. David tries to look again but sees nothing. He convinces himself that it was just his imagination. That night, while David is busy with his work, he hears a knock on the door. He thinks that might be Gruner. He calls out his name, but there is no response. Holding a lamp, David slowly walks toward the door. Suddenly, he hears strange sounds, nothing like a human voice. Then he sees something horrifying. From under the door, an unnatural hand tries to crawl inside. It does not look human at all. Seeing this, David is terrified. He immediately runs toward the basement and hides there. Moments later, the mysterious creature breaks into the house. It begins searching for David, moving silently. From a small crack in the basement, David watches the creature. Due to a small movement, the creature notices him and rushes towards him, trying to grab him through the opening. In panic, David quickly grabs a knife and stabs the creature directly in the eye. Screaming in pain, the creature retreats and escapes. He knows it could return at any moment. Now, he is certain that what was written in Robert's diary was true. Terrified, he stays awake the entire night. The next morning, David steps outside and notices footprints in the sand. They clearly do not belong to a human. The footprints lead straight into the sea. At that moment, David finally understands why Gruner surrounded the lighthouse with sharp wooden spikes. He realizes that if he stays in this house, those creatures can kill him at any time. In fear, David runs toward the lighthouse and screams at Gruner to open the gate and let him in. But Gruner refuses. He tells David that he should have left with the ship. Gruner does not even allow him to come near the lighthouse and throws water at him, forcing him away. Left with no choice, David returns to his house. He boards up every window with wood, surrounds the house with sharp spikes, and places old papers and books outside the gate. He pours oil over them, planning to scare the creatures away with fire if they return. However, there is one thing David still does not know, and he is about to learn it tonight. Inside the house, he finds an old box. Inside it, there is a gun and many bullets. This gives him a small sense of hope. As the sun begins to set, fear fills David's heart. Soon, darkness covers the island. David sits quietly in a corner, holding the gun tightly. His heartbeat grows faster. Suddenly, he hears strange noises again. When he looks toward the sea through the window, his body freezes in fear. He realizes that it is not just one creature. Many of those strange creatures are emerging from the water, slowly moving toward his house. Soon, they gather outside and try to break the door. David starts firing at them. Some creatures fall and die. He assumes the gunshots will scare them away. Instead, seeing their companions die only makes them angrier. Following his plan, David lights the papers and books on fire. The flames frighten the creatures, forcing them back into the sea, but the fire spreads and reaches the house. Since the house is made of wood, it quickly catches fire. To survive, David wraps himself in a blanket and escapes outside. He hides behind a large rock near the lighthouse. During the fight, his hand is badly injured. Suddenly, heavy rain begins to fall, slowly putting out the fire. But by morning, David's house is completely destroyed and burned to ashes. Now, if David wants to survive, he must take shelter in the lighthouse. David picks up his rifle and hides among the rocks near the lighthouse, waiting for Gruner to come out to fetch water. When Gruner finally steps outside, David follows him quietly. Suddenly, a strange creature near Gruner attacks David. Somehow, David manages to control it. This creature turns out to be Gruner's guardian. When David is about to shoot it, Gruner stops him and says that the creature is his pet. David lowers his gun and takes advantage of the moment. He makes a deal with Gruner. If Gruner wants the creature to live, then David must be allowed to stay in the lighthouse. Otherwise, he will kill it. Gruner agrees because David has a large supply of food and gunpowder. Before evening, both of them return to the lighthouse with the remaining supplies and fall asleep. The next morning, David wakes up to find the creature licking his injured hand. To his shock, his wound is completely healed. David is amazed. He becomes curious and wants to learn more about this creature and reveal its secret to the world. He believes that if they expose this miracle, both he and Gruner could gain fame and money. But Gruner wants none of it. He does not want to leave the island. He has no one left in the world. For him, this island is perfect. Here he sees himself as a king, ruling by his own rules. He has even written messages across the island declaring himself its ruler. Then David asked how this strange creature became Gruner's pet. Gruner explained that he once saved her life when she was trapped in his fishing net. She was very young at that time, and since that day, she stayed with him and obeyed him completely. But Gruner is a cruel man. He treats the creature very badly. He abuses her every day and forces himself on her. Gruner admits that once she tried to attack him, and in response, He punished her so brutally that she began to see herself as his slave. Now everything becomes clear to David. He understands why the creatures come out of the sea every night. They are trying to rescue their companion and take her back, but Gruner never allows that. These creatures cannot attack during the day because sunlight burns their skin. David no longer wants to stay on this island. He wants to escape somehow. As evening approached, Gruner tells David to get ready with the gun because the creatures can attack at any time. They turn on the lighthouse light, and soon a large number of creatures emerge from the sea and move toward them. Gruner keeps firing at them, but David is overwhelmed with fear. He retreats inside the lighthouse, ignores Gruner's orders, and sits silently in a corner. Soon, David loses consciousness. Gruner fights the creatures alone throughout the night. The next morning, Gruner angrily awakens David by throwing water on his face. He tells him that if he wants to live, he must kill these creatures. Otherwise, he will be thrown out of the lighthouse and forced to obey every command. David will have to fetch water daily, do all the maintenance work, and guard the lighthouse every night. David has no other choice. This becomes his forced reality. From then on, David obeyed Gruner, but one thing deeply disturbed him. Every day, Gruner physically tortured the female creature. Night falls again, and both prepare for guard duty. This time, David did not feel fear. He started shooting the creatures, but Gruner did nothing. He locked the lighthouse gate, leaving David outside alone, forcing him to learn how to fight. David battled through the night. By morning, Gruner finds him sitting outside, covered in blood. David had learned how to survive. Time passed. Nights were spent fighting creatures, and days were spent working under Gruner's control. The island became a place of prison. David constantly dreamed of freedom. Over time, David formed a strange bond with the female creature. He began to feel sympathy for her, and finally understood how painful it was to live separated from your own kind. He gave her a name, Aneris. Days go by, and the attacks slowly begin to decrease. David assumed the creatures may have migrated or given up, but Gruner warns him that this is not over. They are increasing their numbers. One night, after dinner, David and Gruner start playing chess to pass the time. During the game, they make a huge mistake. They forgot to turn on the lighthouse light. Taking advantage of the darkness, the creatures attack. Their numbers are overwhelming. Even together, they cannot hold them off for long. They have no plan, and their bullets are nearly finished. Somehow, they reach the top of the lighthouse. During the fight, Gruner's leg is badly injured. Both believe this is the end, but just then, morning arrives. As sunlight spreads, the creatures retreat back into the sea. Aneris tries to heal Gruner's wound. By now, David understands they cannot win this fight. They're running out of bullets and food. One day, while walking outside, David sees a ship in the distance. He rushes inside to grab a flare gun and tries to signal the ship. Gruner stops him. He does not want David to leave. At that moment, Aneris attacks Gruner to protect David. Gruner refuses to let anyone leave the island. This place is his kingdom. He fears that if David escapes, he will reveal everything about Aneris and the creatures. Slowly, the ship disappeared into the sea. David loses all hope. Days pass. Gruner continues abusing both David and Aneris. One day, David made a small toy boat for Aneris as a gift. He crafted it carefully from a fishbone. When Aneris saw the boat, she did not smile or react the way David expected. Instead, she gently took David's hand and led him to a distant corner of the island. There, hidden and untouched, was a real boat. Seeing it, David was shocked. When David asked Gruner about the boat, Gruner admitted that he already knew about it. He explained that some people once reached this island using that boat, trying to save their lives. But before morning came, none of them survived. All of them were killed by the creatures. Those people were carrying ammunition on their ship, but a violent storm caused the ship to sink near the island. As soon as David heard this, an idea formed in his mind. They had something like a diving suit. David suggested that if one of them wore the diving suit and went underwater to the sunken ship, they might find bullets or dynamite. With explosives, fighting the creatures would become much easier. Gruner immediately refused. He did not want to take the risk.
but David was ready to put his life in danger. Days passed like this. During this time, a deep connection formed between David and Anaris. David began to care for her deeply. Their bond slowly turned into something more emotional. One day, Gruner secretly saw them together. At that moment, Gruner felt that Anaris was slipping away from him. In his mind, David had become a threat. Gruner decided that David must be removed. The very next day, Gruner suddenly agreed to David's plan. He told David that he would wear the diving suit and go underwater to collect as much RDX as possible, and Gruner would pull him back up using the boat. But Gruner's true intention was very different. His plan was to use David to bring the dynamite boxes up from the sea and then leave him there to die. He wanted the creatures to kill David, so the explosives would be his and Daenerys would once again become his slave.
Both of them took the boat and reached the spot where the ship had sunk. David put on the diving suit and went underwater. Below the surface, he saw that the ship was completely destroyed. Luckily, he managed to find several boxes of dynamite. But suddenly, some creatures appeared in front of him. Seeing them, David panicked and fell. The diving suit was so heavy that he could barely move. He was unable to send any signal to Gruner above. Gruner assumed that the creatures had killed David, but in reality, those were only two small children of the creatures. Somehow, David managed to free himself from the diving suit and swim back to the surface. Nearby, they found some old boxes filled with dynamite. After this, both of them got to work. They placed dynamite in 2 layers around the lighthouse, planning to destroy all the monsters in a single attack. Months passed and winter arrived. Snow began to fall. Once again, the creatures suddenly disappeared. The attack stopped completely. It was as if the creatures had sensed the trap and decided not to attack. Gruner suspected that Anaris had warned them. Because of this, he began torturing Anaris even more. This time, David stopped him. Eventually, they came up with a new plan. They decided to leave the lighthouse's main gate open. As soon as the creatures entered, they would blow them up with dynamite. David cleverly asked Anaris to scream from the top of the lighthouse. Hearing her voice, the creatures became furious. When they saw the main gate open, they believed this was their chance to rescue her. One by one, the creatures emerged from the sea and rushed toward the lighthouse. As soon as they entered, they attacked David. David fought bravely and somehow survived. When all the creatures gathered near the lighthouse, Gruner pulled the dynamite lever, but nothing happened. The blast did not go off. In reality, David had disconnected the wiring earlier and Gruner had forgotten to reconnect it. David ran upstairs immediately and began reconnecting the wires. Meanwhile, the creatures tried to climb the lighthouse. Gruner was alone, holding them back. As soon as the wiring was complete, David detonated the first layer. A massive explosion killed many of the creatures, but there were still many left ready to attack. Gruner then detonated the second layer as well. The explosion was so powerful that both David and Gruner lost consciousness. The next morning, when they woke up, Anaris was gone. Dead creatures were scattered everywhere. Gruner was killing those who were still alive but badly injured. Suddenly, David noticed a necklace hanging around one creature. Seeing the creature struggling in pain, David felt deep regret. He realized his mistake. These creatures were not monsters. They were like humans, just unable to speak. For Gruner, none of this mattered. After that day, the creatures never attacked again, but every day, cries could be heard from the shore. David did not realize the damage they had caused. How many families were destroyed? How many children lost their parents? All because of a misunderstanding. The next day, David saw small children of the creatures near the sea. These were the ones who had lost their families. David made a circle of stones and placed a small toy boat in the center, hoping Anaris would see it and return. He waited for hours, but she never came back. The next morning, David woke up and saw Gruner sleeping. Near him were some old belongings, including a photograph. As soon as David saw the photo, he was stunned. The woman in the picture, the same woman's photo he had seen in Robert's diary, was standing beside Gruner. She was Gruner's wife. That was the truth. The weather officer, Robert, had never died. He only changed his identity. Gruner was Robert. He changed his name because he never wanted to leave the island. After realizing this, David gave up hope of ever leaving the island. The next evening, when David went to the shore, he noticed that the toy boat was gone. In its place stood a small creature child holding the boat. David put a burning piece of wood in the center of the stone circle. He wanted to show that he did not want to fight. He wanted peace. Soon, a Nereis emerged from the sea, followed by the entire group of creatures. This time, no one attacked David. They wanted peace too. They only wanted a safe place for their children. But then, Gruner arrived, holding a gun. For him, peace meant losing power. David tried to explain that the creatures did not want to fight, but Gruner refused to listen. He shouted at Nereis to go inside. For the first time, she disobeyed him. She was no longer his slave. Gruner realized that his rule over the island was over. His anger consumed him. David thought maybe Gruner had finally understood that every living being wants freedom. But Gruner was blinded by his desire for control. He fired a flare gun toward the creatures. The flare hit a child and killed it instantly. Terrified, the creatures fled. Nereis lost all trust in David. Enraged, David ran toward the lighthouse to confront Gruner. He asked him why he did it. These creatures only wanted peace, but Gruner had become so violent that he decided to kill David. He raised an iron rod to strike him. At that moment, David called him by his real name and said, "Stop, Robert, you are not a murderer." Hearing this, Gruner froze. Robert had never been a monster. Isolation, loneliness, his wife's death, and deep depression had destroyed his mind. He wasn't a killer. He was once a good man. Robert finally understood that the creatures never wanted war. They only wanted peace. He had killed them only to feel powerful. Overcome with guilt, Robert surrendered himself to the creatures. Within moments, they killed him. David locked himself inside the lighthouse. Time passed. After 1 year, a government officer arrived with a new weather officer. When asked about the previous officer, David said the same thing Robert once said, that he went toward the sea and never came back. The newcomers assumed David was Gruner. David did not correct them. He quietly stood on the balcony, saying nothing. He no longer wanted to leave the island, just like Gruner once did. Meanwhile, Nereis lived peacefully with her family. They no longer feared anyone like Gruner. They were finally free, both on land and in the sea. And with that, the story comes to an end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe,